Breaking news that I actually missed yesterday, Sunday morning here. Folks, I opened my emails from yesterday, major invite, Washington, D.C., with an Atlantic Council think tank, invited all about recent activities with Canada, the G7, and the Asia Pacific Partnership. What Mark Carney says, what your premiers say, what they publish and do are two very different things. I've tried to educate this over and over and over again. Why I transitioned into Canada, the 51st state. Because the direction we're on, what we've always been doing with our constitutional monarchy, is a double cross and a double speak. It's the two crosses, the double speak. American ancestors from the War of Independence onward all the way through Reconstruction phase knew what Canada was and what they were never ever going to be. The Founding Fathers, in that first and then second document, longest running We the People Constitution in the world, put in place protections so that the people of America would always be born equal and never be double-crossed or double-spoken to ever again. The United States Constitution is a direct document, straight speak, doesn't open the doors to much interpretation on every single article. It's very direct, very easy to understand, very hard to manipulate the meaning of those articles, done on purpose, because up until that time, as British subjects, Americans were used to the double cross and double speak of the Crown. We give you vague statements, colorful statements that can be misconstrued or misinterpreted to mean something completely different. It's called customary law of the Crown. If they codify something, it was so up for interpretation, you could almost go any direction you wanted to. Very vague. And this is what the Crown has always done. It's what Americans made sure to remove from their system so that, again, all Americans would be born equal. Equal. This is not the same for Canadians. Folks, in the link of this title, I give you the latest that's going on in Canada against the United States of America. I give you from Washington, D.C., the Atlantic Council think tank in charge of the G7. You know, I went to the B7. These are folks that myself, some other individuals, I'm not going to name names, but came with me, witnessed. We witnessed these groups. We met some of these American think tank groups. In fact, we had at least Politico write about us, and we even heard about our letter. Mark Carney had two letters. One, the USA will not accept. One, he doesn't want to present. That was our letter. Our letter to the ambassador for the United States. Well, folks, it's cemented now on the Atlantic Council website. Their direction for China is if you have missed it, Donald J. Trump yesterday in a news release, a press release, a statement on Truth Social told all G7 partners, if you want to end the war in Ukraine, you have to sanction Russia for real. To do that, you must sanction their partners. Well, folks, that's China and then soon to be India. Mark Carney stops short of all that. He says, we will sanction China on his publication at the G7 in Alberta, in Kananaskis, where Trump abruptly got up and left everybody. He abruptly left. As soon as Mark Carney opened his mouth as host in Alberta, Canada, and said we have to target China if they go after Taiwan, which they're not because they already have Taiwan. It's called China One Policy that everybody of the G7 signed on, cemented, certified. Does China have any worries about Taiwan? The answer is no. China is a BRICS nation with Russia, with India, and many other large economies that could easily replace a country like Canada as a G7 member. Largely, when you look at G20, these countries easily belong there. But because of BRICS, because of communism, military dictatorship, severe civil law socialism, they're not. But yet Canada has a whole other double cross, double speak called the Asia-Pacific Partnership, where Mark Carney, who in G7 puts on a brave front, at least a bullshit testimony to the United States, says, oh, yeah, you're right, China bad, India bad, all this with Russia, but yet we're going to move in that direction. And how do you find that? In the link of this title, first you find what Donald J. Trump has highlighted. The fact, Canadians, you have to understand this. This is from USA's Washington, D.C. think tank under the President of the United States. I got the email. I have the email. I put the link in the title in this video. You can click on it and you can do your own searches yourself. G7 country by G7 country. I also give you the double cross and double speak of every single premier and absolutely Prime Minister Mark Carney in the Asia-Pacific Partnership. Danielle Smith fully on board with this. Alberta being supposedly the most conservative province, but the most cementing with China and BRICS and Beijing. Most in Canada is Alberta. Alberta has the most in-depth trade with those countries, enforcing Russia over Ukraine, if you want to look at ending that war. Canada, largely led by Alberta, but Canada's in there, is responsible for the continuation of it. They're purposefully strengthening Russia by strengthening China and India, who strengthens Russia's economy, keeping them very powerful. Canada can't be both. You can't be a G7 partner and then say, hey, we're going to end all American automobiles, EVs, and replace them with Chinese EVs because we need to sell our canola, and many other products from Alberta, Saskatchewan, as well as maintain our energy influx into China. Canadians, when you click on the G7 China radar, when you click it, that shows all G7 partners' economic relationship with China, you find something very, very disturbing about one particular country called Canada, who, for all intents and purposes, unlike the European Union, when we look at Turkey and other countries, with strong relationships with China, with direct trade access to China, meaning train access, because they're on a shared continental system. Yeah, think about that. Not only are they in close proximity, if not directly a border with Russia and Kazakhstan, European Union countries, they have direct trade access to China. Now, you can understand why countries like Turkey and many others out of the European Union have strong ties with China. But what if I told you the one country out of the G7 on that radar that's being showcased to me by the Atlantic Council, Americans out of the G7. I went to the B7 meeting that develops the G7. This is the American group that designs all of that. The American group out of Washington, D.C. When you click on Canada, you find out that Canada's Crown, Canada's major multinational corporations invest tremendously more in China than China invests in Canada. What does that mean? It means Canada, our Crown, our Prime Minister Mark Carney, and all of those before him, all the way to Stephen Harper, have been mandating through the Asia-Pacific Partnership massive targeted investment into Chinese infrastructure, Chinese businesses, Chinese economic systems at an unprecedented rate. So much more than China invests into Canada. Completely opposite of all other G7 partners outside of direct trade route access partners of the European Union. Canadians, do you understand? You don't share any land border with China. In fact, you're nowhere near China. European countries are bordering and have continental trade routes through train, just like proximity Canada and Mexico to the United States of America. Our strong trade relationship makes sense. But folks, out of all G7 partners, your country has been going out of its way to invest and secure the Chinese system and the Chinese economy at a way higher rate than China reciprocates investment into Canada, meaning Canada's buying into China. You, the Canadian people, are buying into China at an unbelievable explosive rate compared to all other G7 partners. Donald J. Trump's statement on countries sanctioning China not only is not happening with Canada and never going to happen, they're going the other way. They're getting more ties, stronger influence in China. They're buying into China with all of your tax dollars, with all the money they borrow against you, all of the money they print in your names, they send to China at an explosive rate beyond any rate of any other G7 country besides a handful who are extremely Islamist or civil law, socialist, military dictatorship run in the European Union and have direct continental trade with China for a very long time, meaning trains, cross-border trade routes through Russia, Kazakhstan, and always have. But not Canada. But Canada has effectually gone that route, gone out of their way to artificially create all that and invest in the Chinese system, Chinese communist state organizations at an unprecedented rate, far beyond any other G7 country, at the detriment to Canada, meaning China isn't reciprocating that investment back into Canada at the explosive rate that Canada's doing in China. Canada is lifting up China beyond any other G7 country, as though they're an enemy to the United States. And again, if you don't believe it, Mark Carney's own words, right out of the Asian Pacific Partnership, right off the website, provided to me by Washington, D.C.'s Atlantic Council, as well as the Chinese radar. And the statement made by Donald J. Trump yesterday, the breaking news report, where he says, if you want to end the war in Russia and you really care, you'll sanction China. How does Canada respond, Mark Carney? And premiers, specifically just on Thursday, Premier Danielle Smith, oh no, we're going further with China. We're going further in cementing China, investing in China. we're doing that. All Canadian premiers, especially Western premiers, and absolutely Mark Carney. As was Justin Trudeau, as was Stephen Harper before him. The writing is on the wall. The United States is warning Canada that this is coming to a head. How does Canada's people poll these days? Real poll. Canadians want to replace American cars, American manufacturing, with Chinese manufacturing. Canadians, what do you think your wages will be in a future aligned with China or India? What do you think the status and quality of life for Canadians will be on a transition to China and India's economic system? Well, I can tell you, third and second world status, caste system beyond any measure of Canada in any history it's ever had. Far worse than the Great Depression. Far worse than Alberta's history as a Dust Bowl. If you've never read about Alberta's Dust Bowl history, you should. My family lived through it. We're that people. We lived through it. It's in our family history. We know how bad it can get. And then some. It can even get worse than that, especially when your government is working for the enemy. Absolutely. Your Canadian government registers as treasonous to the United States, which means Canada is absolutely the number one national threat to the United States of America today. Donald J. Trump exposes that. They showcase that. And now today in breaking news in this video, I release that truth to you. It's up to you to share. You can click on all the links yourself. You can see that at an explosive rate how much of your domestic financial system is now vested in China and how little it's reciprocated from China. This is opposite for the United States. China invests heavy in the United States. The United States barely invests back into China. It's called protecting your own. You want to be a part of our economy? No problem. USA and China trade, but not at the expense of the American people and not at the expense of America's national security. This is completely opposite for the country of Canada. That is the highest opposite spectrum than any other nation out of the G7, including the 28 nations of the European Union, who are China's number one trading partner, but 3 border countries with direct continental trade routes via train, transport, highways, roads, all of it, which Canada could never have in place and does not have in place, but yet Canada is investing heavily in Chinese infrastructure to build a lasting trade system at the expense of all the Canadian people, meaning China's not investing in that reciprocal infrastructure in Canada. Canadians are doing all that in China at an explosive rate. If you don't understand what that means and what USA is going to end up doing to Canada, I don't know what to tell you. All the talk of Canada, the 51st state that's dropped off because USA's in a transition period of destroy Canada economically. Canada will make that decision. They have to, as we're their number one threat to their national security on their border. In fact, we've exceeded Mexico. Mexico, China? Well, now it's Canada, China. Canada always tries to blame Mexico, yet look at the G7 partners. Look at NATO allies. Look at NORAD. Who is betraying the United States the most out of all countries in the world? The answer is clearly Canada, in its traditional double-cross, double-speak. In one face, Atlantic Council, big talk, but nothing in writing. And then in the other face on the website, is the Asian Pacific Partnership, where Mark Carney and the premiers who've met and made all these agreements have promised to transition towards China and India against the United States of America. Tell America one thing, tell China and India another thing. Playing two sides in a double speak and a double cross, which is America's oldest enemies, which was all of the British Empire, which is alive and well in Canada, the country, today. Because that's what our Constitution calls for. That's our highest laws. That's our design that nobody wishes to read. Nobody in any smallest of small minorities wishes to read. Those who follow me, the very loyalist of loyal, because my following has fallen off. People haven't stopped following me. They've just put the horse blinders on. No, I'm with China and India. I'm with Canada. I'm a farmer. I'm a conservative. I need to sell my canola to China. I will pay for Chinese infrastructure. I will pay for Chinese military superiority throughout the world. I will invest in that. Just buy my canola. I will sell my soul to Satan himself. I'm Christian. I go to church on Sunday, but to hell with Jesus. I love China. I love money. My resource, my precious. I'm not equal. I don't believe in Jesus Christ, equality of the person. I don't believe in America. I don't really believe in Christian principles. This is the truth. And at least 6 out of 10 Canadians polled today. That's what you believe. And I am sorry, Canadians. But this goes far beyond Liberal Party of Canada, far beyond NDP Green Bloc. This is entirely all Crown in Canada in a serious majority. In a very, very serious majority. And a lot of folks, I can see it in my own following, no, I don't want to address this. I don't want to look at the truth. To hell with you and to hell with the United States. Well, it will be to hell with you and your children. And God is not going to come save you. God won't save folks who don't want to save themselves. If you participate in the sin, you support the sin, God doesn't come to your benefit. But I went to church on Sunday. I prayed to you. I told you what you wanted to hear. But in my daily deeds and my daily actions, I supported all these other things. I supported all these other things. And in my heart of hearts, I can pretend, I can put on a show. I can go to church on Sunday. I can put on a show. But then I can go home, till my fields, sell my canola to China and smile. I can vote for Chinese EVs. I can say to hell with America, a Christian country. Born equal. Canada, you're not even born equal. You're born in class structure. You live in class structure. You live in a system that defies entirely the New Testament. You say, oh no, it's okay. I can justify it. I'm a good person. But yet I support my government in doing everything opposite of everything out of the New Testament and Jesus Christ. It's okay. It's okay, right? It's not okay. It's not going to be okay. And the United States is calling you out, Canada. Canadians, if you don't know, Donald J. Trump's latest message is directly and squarely on Canada, numero 1. Does it affect the European Union? Absolutely. But who are they really targeting when they say 50% tariffs on China from all G7 partners? Who would be worse for wear in that scenario? Who would fall into the worst sanctions out of all members of the G7? Massive Crown massive crown corporations, massive Canadian-based multinationals, massive Canadian businesses would be the first to be squarely affected if such a thing was put in place, let alone sanctions, trade embargoes. And because Canada can't go back, because the Crown will not stop, they love their power, their superiority, their fascism and their socialism. Because they love it so much, their superiority, their power, their control, their autocracy over all of you. And none of you are going to call into account that. You're all going to say, yes, master, I'm a Kanaka. I'm a good old Kanaka. I go to church every Sunday. I tell the Lord what they want to hear, but God sees the truth. They see the truth of you and your sins that you commit each and every day. You can say one thing, you can talk publicly to your friends, but what you really want, what's in your heart, and what you're saying, polled and saying in majority, is that you want that. You want that evil in your life. It's already in your heart. And this is in massive Canadian majority, not some minority. It's majority. People keep telling me, oh no, that's not what I believe. No, that's not me. Why is a majority going that route? Why does the majority want it? And why do so many comments come on my feeds from friends and followers who are upset when I call them out for their delusions? When people say, oh, well, I want the Chinese cars here. Are you nuts? You want China's security? You want communism? Because if you're investing in it in an unprecedented rate with your tax dollars or the money they print in your name or the debts they take against you and your children to make your life worse, and absolutely all the children born tomorrow effectually making their lives much, much worse, and you're participating in that, and you're saying that's good, I want to be devalued, I want to devalue my children, as long as I get wealth today, screw over all my children tomorrow. Who's the animal? Who's the beast? Who would eat their own children? Who's eating their own children? Well, Canadians are, in majority. Give me for today, make my life better today at the expense of my children. If that doesn't scream nefarious, Luciferian, if that doesn't scream the epitome, when you're willing to sell your own children down the river Styx, you're ready to sell your unborn children or even the souls of the innocent today, your own kin, your own flesh and blood, and you knowingly do that because you want for you today, and you don't care about what expense they incur for the future, what impact that has majorly on their life, you're what's wrong today. And the United States clearly sees you, has you, Canada, in their crosshairs of all G7 partners. Again, if you don't believe me, Washington, D.C., Atlantic Council, Chinese radar, country by country, measured by the United States of America. Why? Because they've had tariff regimes. That registry in Washington, D.C., that so many of you daft, evil, sick, sadistic Canadians who want to make up stories and fictions, everything but the reality that's right in front of you. You call USA a corporation, when it's you who are the slaves, you who's in that system. That's not a corporation, it's a monarchy, which is not the United States. They're not a corporation. Capitalism isn't to blame here. It's socialism and fascism that's to blame. It's the migration of these ideas and beliefs from the great north called Canada to all those Democrat states and the Democrat Party itself. Over and over again, the greatest thinkers of the Democrat Party come from Canada and the British model system. More often than not, over and over, it's Canadians, Canadian musicians, Canadian actors, Hollywood celebrities who've migrated to the United States and infected that party over and over again. I have so much that's been shared to me that just makes you go, so much I knew, and every day I learn more and more. Canada's the evil. Canada's the worst of the G7, the most notorious and nefarious of all. And sadly today, which was not present in Canada in 2006, mass majority of Canadians said, hell no. Now today, a mass majority of Canadians say, hell yeah. They've got the devil in them. They're corrupted beyond all measure. It's most of the conservatives too now. It's most. In Canada, a conservative is your radical multinational Democrat. That's what a Canadian conservative is. Nowhere near what a Republican is. Absolutely, entirely not the same thing. Conservative in name only, not in definition. Why? Because they use two different dictionaries. Canadian conservative does not mean Republican, and it never will. In fact, it's sworn to destroy that which is Republican. They will consume and manipulate the most radical of the Democrats, and they have and are and have been forever. It's why TD grew in a vast majority of the banking districts of the United States, where no American financial institutions run that way. But yet Canada and its crown corporations were easily able to navigate that system and overtake it and participate like no other American institution. That is a full-blown